too, Josh. It's just a little bit. Doesn't have to be all the way. That'll work. That'll work. Great. Okay. So earlier we talked about two types of texts that you're likely to read, right? There are more than two types, but we talked about informational text, right? An informational text is like a nonfiction text, right?
Yeah.
Remember, is it real or imaginary?
Imaginary. Real.
It is. What do you think, Josh?
Real.
Real. Yeah, informational or nonfiction means real, okay? And then narrative text is like a fiction text, right? And that is made up. So what kind of story did we determine that a plan for a hike is? Informational or narrative?
Narrative.
Do you agree? Yeah, narrative, right. So good job. It's narrative. It's a made up story. It's called Plan for a Hike. Now it's helpful to know about the parts of narratives because most narratives have most narratives have a certain number of parts to it, okay? And by knowing what these parts are, it can help us to think more closely and deeply about the meaning and the importance of the text that we're reading, okay? So to do that, we've got a little graphic organizer here that has the story elements or story parts on it, okay? So let's have a look at these. All right, so, and I know that a lot of these are things that we've talked about many, many times before, right? You're gonna recognize these parts. So the first one, of course, starts with the characters, right? The characters. All right, so, and then we also have, let's put your finger on the next part or the next element.
Story.
It's
setting.
Good job. Nice correction. Good job. The setting, the problem. This was a big word. Sequence of events. That means sequence is the order, first, next, last, right? Or beginning, middle, end. And then the solution to the problem, how the problem got solved. And the main idea, because every story, right, has got a main idea, something deeper for us to think about at the end of the story. Okay, so let's start on this side. In fact, why don't we just, for the moment, why don't we just fold this up so that we're just looking at these first three parts, so it won't seem quite so overwhelming for us to talk about this, all right? And I'm actually gonna write these down today, so you're not gonna need pencils. Yes, what's your question?
Are we gonna come here tomorrow?
I'm going to talk to Mr. Slattery and ask him whether he wants me to or not, but typically no. He doesn't want me to come on Fridays, but maybe, we'll see. Okay, so we've read this story now several times, okay? So let's just start by looking at the first of these three elements, the characters. So who are the characters in our story?
4 people.
There are 4 people, and do you remember their names?
No.
Good. Thanks for saying that. I don't remember their names, right? So where are we going to find them? In the text. In the text. And here's one for you, Josh. So do you think we're going to find the names in the beginning of a narrative or at the end of a narrative? At the beginning, yeah. So why don't you scan the first page and see if you can find some of those names. What does it say? Dean, Brandy,
and I.
Okay. Dean, Brandy, and I. We talked a little bit about that, but I'm glad you're asking that. That's a really important question. Who is I? Did we ever find out what the speaker's name was?
No.
We didn't. But we do have words.
I can make a name.
No, let's not make a name, but we do have a word for the speaker of the story. We call them the narrator, okay? So we're gonna say the narrator. So we've got Dean, Brandy, and the narrator, okay? And was there a 4th person?
Yes.
Yes. Beth, good. Beth was the friend that had the truck, right? Okay, and remember, characters are not just names. Characters are people, right? They're people in the story. So let's think about what we know about these people in the story, okay? What do we know about them? What do we know about the people in the story?
I know that.
What do we know about
going
Dean?
on a hike.
That's what we know what they're going to do. But what do we know about them as people? As people. So
They're people.
Dean, Brandy, and I.
They have
Okay.
jobs to do.
That's also what they do. That's true. But what about their relationship?
They're friends.
They're friends, and let's read that first line.
Friends.
Dean, Brand. Good job. You put your finger on friends. That tells us their relationship, right? So we know that they are friends. Do we know anything about their ages?
No.
Know anything about
I
their
bet
ages?
they're teenagers.
Because they drive a car.
Hold on a second. Oh, nice. Does it say in the text that they're teenagers? Does it say they are teenagers?
No, but
No, but what evidence are you using to determine that they are teenagers?
they drive a car and they're like
Drive a car.
going somewhere far.
And they're going somewhere far, so we know that they're not young, right? They're not like kids like you who can't drive a car yet. It's not your age. It's got to be older than you.
I know
And
how
they're
to.
old enough to not only drive a car, but they're old enough to go on an outing by themselves. Kind of far away, we're thinking, right? Good.
And
So they're friends, and we can infer based on what we know about the ages of people who drive cars and the ages of people who go on hikes without their parents that they are probably teenagers or young adults. So I think we can safely say that they are teenagers or young adults. Good job. So that's all good information about the characters. All right,
Oh,
young
and-
adults. Let's go on to setting. Do you remember what setting is? The story element of setting is two things. It is where the story takes place. Okay, it's where the story takes place, and it's also when. Good job. It's also when the story takes place. Okay, so does it say when the story takes place?
No.
No, and most of the time you're not going to. Stories aren't going to say it was Thursday at 1:00, right? Most of the time stories don't say that. But let me show you. Let me demonstrate for you how I look to see. I'm going to look on my book here. How I look at the text to try to find time clues to tell me something about the time period. So as I read this, I'm going to read the first page
2026.
because I also know that often I find out clues about the setting, the time and place in the beginning of a story. So I'm going to look in the beginning of my story and I'm going to be looking for time words, okay? So Dean, Brandy, and I are best friends. We like to spend time, here's the word time, with each other on weekends. So we made plans to take a big hike. Is a weekend a time word? Yeah, a weekend is a time word, right? So I know I can put for my setting, this is a story that takes place. Let's see, they're making a plan before the weekend, right? So the time is before a weekend. Before a weekend. I can
what
add
is it
that
on?
for my time, okay? And now we need to move on to place. But before we do, what did you want to say,
We
Ryan?
could also go to this place since the skies should be colored of what it would be.
To find out the time or the place?
The time.
Oh, are you thinking because it's kind of dark that maybe it's like
Yeah.
nighttime? That would be a good clue too, is to look at the illustrations. If we see a sun, right? So, Josh, stay with me over here, please. Okay, I need your focus. Thank you. So, Josh, so what Rylan's suggesting is sometimes illustrations can also give us clues in addition to the text as to what the time and the place is. I'm going to use your strategy that you just mentioned, looking at the illustration, to see if we can figure out what the place is, right? Because does it say in the text where the kids are, where these young people are? Does it
No.
say? Does it say they were in Northampton or they were in? No, it doesn't say. But we can
But we know.
we can infer.
We
Infer
can
means
try
that we
to know.
don't. We can try to know. I like how you put that, Josh. We can try to know. Look at that colored picture. I'm scanning I'm going to demonstrate for you how I'm going to analyze this illustration.
Oh, look at
I'm scanning
look at
this picture.
Look at the picture when she was on the phone.
Yeah.
On the calendar.
Yeah. Okay. Does it have any words on the calendar about what
But
month
you
it
can,
is?
You can count.
We could
see the-
count
see
on the
the day.
calendar, right? And I see that they've circled the middle day, so that must be that's when the phone call took place. Is maybe on if that's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday is when they did their planning for the weekend. Nice job, Josh. Okay, I'm going to go to this picture now. Let's look at this illustration to see if we can figure out the place, the setting. Okay.
Oh, look at the city behind them.
Ah, so first look at the text, okay? Let's read this. Would you like to read the first sentence, Ryland? Let's see if there's anything in here that says anything about the place.
When
Do you want to look on yours? It might be easier for you to see it. And Josh, we're on the last page. Will you get to that page too?
Already on it.
There you go. Good job. So
We made art of whale.
it's a red word. That word is hour.
Owl.
Repeat.
Hour.
Okay.
Made
Land. Okay.
And
our hands, and that's
this.
when it was time to
That.
go. We
Then
and
First letter is.
when it was time to go.
Beautiful. I'm going to stop you right there. And Josh, do you want to read the next sentence or do you want me to read it?
you.
Okay. We packed our things in compactors. That word that we looked at, compact bags. So we didn't, eyes over here, we didn't need to take the truck. Off we went to, on the long hike. Does it say the place?
No.
No. So let's use the strategy we've been talking about, and we could look at the illustrations. We could look at the illustration. And Josh, you mentioned something about the illustrations. What did you notice in the back of the...
They're in New York
Well, do we know it's New York?
because of the tall buildings.
There are tall buildings, and we do know that there's tall buildings in New York. Other cities actually have tall buildings too, like Chicago. But we do know it's a city, don't we, because of those tall buildings? It's a city, right? So we could say they left the city, and by the end of the story, they were driving into maybe the country. Can't we infer that from the illustration
Yeah.
because of the trees? So I'm going to add that to
Yeah.
our graphic organizer. The setting, the time is before a weekend planning, okay?
But
And then
but they're left in the knot.
they left the city
And then they
to go
to
to
hike.
a hike in the country, right? So that uses some of our place words, our setting words in the country. Nice job. Yes.
We could also go look at the map in the beginning
We could. Yeah, that's a
to
good.
see where
Okay.
what's on the map.
Yeah. This is a trail map though. This trail map is probably just a map of the hike itself. It's not it doesn't look to me anyway, because I see those dotted lines. It looks to me like it's a trail map that one of them
And there's
used.
water around it.
Yeah, so maybe that's not a map of how to get from the city to the country, but good thinking. I like how you're using the illustration. You're doing what I had suggested, right? A good strategy is sometimes to
right
look at
there.
those illustrations to help
They
us to
go on
know.
the trail, and that's the mountain.
Excellent. Okay, great. Let's go on to the third element, all right? On our organizer, the third element of narrative stories is the problem, right? That's always important to narratives, is the problem. Otherwise, it would be a very boring story without a problem, right?
Boring.
Okay, so what is the problem of our story? One way to figure out the problem is we can let's review what happened in the story. So first, what happened? And you can refer to your first page. First,
The,
Dean, Brandy, and the narrator, what did they do? What did they decide to do?
go on a big hike.
They decided to go on a big hike, right? They didn't go on a big hike, but they decided. First, they decided to go on a big hike, and they needed a plan, right? Okay.
And they made it on the map.
And so they made a plan, right? They made a plan,
They made a plan.
right? Because all three of them had jobs, right? It said here, I'm checking the text, it said, Dean was the best at planning the trail, so that was his job. Brandy is the best one to plan the meals, so that's her job. I'm, meaning the narrator, the best one to plan the packing, so that's my job. They all had plans. Okay, have we gotten to a problem yet?
No.
No, all right, so I'm going to turn the page. And often I do find problems are sort of not at the very beginning, but often they're in the beginning to the middle, all right? So we're turning to the third page, which is about the beginning or middle. And I'm going to read for a little bit. So put your hand down for 1 second, Rylan, and let's listen to see if we could figure out when we start hearing about the problem. We each began to plan. Listen to this word. Suddenly,
That's the
dum 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 dum, right?
Bum bum
Bum bum, right? That's suddenly sometimes is a clue that maybe the problem's about to appear in our story. So let me read the next line. Dean asked, "Did one of you rent the truck?"
We forgot.
We remember that word? Exclaimed. Yeah, and
Where are we?
We forgot. I'm on page 3. We forgot
Where's
with an
exclaim?
exclamation point, right?
Where's
We
exclaim?
forgot. We exclaimed. Remember we
We
talked about
had
it has to do
to
with an exclamation point, right? It's hold on 1 second. Oh, hold on 1 second. You asked a question and then you started to read. So let's just answer your question. You asked, what does exclaimed mean? Do you remember what we talked about with exclaimed means? It has it's related to exclamation point. When do we put an exclamation point on a sentence? Yeah, how would the sentence be? How would the how is it different than a period then? It's not just when it ends.
A period is when
The
start
sentence
ends.
ends. Okay. When do we put an exclamation point instead of just a period on the end of a sentence?
It takes dog.
Yeah, when there's
A problem.
or when you're blurting something out because the person who is in dialogue is excited about something, right? We forgot, we exclaimed. Okay, so have we got to the problem yet?
No.
Yeah, what is the problem?
They forgot.
They forgot. Okay, so I'll put that on our graphic organizer. Now we know what the problem is. They forgot the truck. Why is it important? Why is that a problem?
Because it is.
The truck
They
to
forgot.
drive.
They forgot. Well, they have a car to drive. Why do you think that they needed a truck to
Go on the
drive?
mountains.
For the tent.
For all the stuff, right? The tent and other things that you might need on a hike, right? You might need the food, the map, the other things on the hike, right? So the problem is they forgot to arrange for a truck. They've got too much stuff, right, for their car. They forgot to arrange a truck. They've got lots of stuff, it says. It says we had to take so much stuff that we would need a truck to get it all there. So that's our problem. Nice job, nice job. So